What's going on, workforce? Brian here, and today we're talking a little bit about Google Stadia, and the reason is that I didn't think this was a story, but it seems that a lot of people are confused about the overall cost of what it took Google to make Stadia. Obviously, Stadia is not in a good state. We pretty much have known that for a while, that this was going to be a pretty poor launch when it came to the rollout of the device, the controllers, and the service. And obviously, I think the bigger sticking point is the games. But we were actually out in California not too long ago, and we got to meet and got to go hands-on with the Stadia. We got to sit down and have some interesting, fun conversations. And the reason we didn't share it at the time was we didn't think it was a story. And so essentially, if you're unaware, Google has already invested billions of dollars into Stadia. And I think that that's a very overwhelming number. But I wanted to sit down and tell you about it and break it down. Now, obviously, this comes from Google themselves, but our sources have, they want to remain private because this isn't necessarily what they want to broadcast to the world right now. But I figured, why not talk about it? Because the obvious piece of the conversation is that Google's just going to abandon Stadia, just like they've abandoned everything else. And they very well might, but it's not going to be anytime soon. Any kind of business is going to look at things and say, is this a business, or is this, are we just throwing good money after bad? And there's no way they're going to do that within the first couple days, or a bad launch, or even a bad 5 years. Most likely with the number that they've spent already, I don't see them walking away for at least 15 years. If they're not making money and if they're just throwing good money after bad, you could see them coming up with an exit strategy. But the thing that a lot of people forget is that this isn't just about like North America. This is about a global market. So I want to take some time and break down the billions for you, namely because I personally thought it was obvious, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that. So let's go ahead and talk about where the money is going. So first of all, R&D, I think everybody's on that page. What does that even mean? Well, from an R&D perspective, you've got servers, you got the architecture, you got all the code, you've got everything that's connected, you got all of that. That's all R&D, building out, obviously the infrastructure requirements and all the pods and how everything connects. Why this is interesting and important is that, just to put this into context, we know that Microsoft spent over $100 million just on kind of developing their controller alone for the Xbox One. And I wanted to put that out there because for a controller and from Microsoft's perspective, that's a lot of money. I don't know if Stadia spent $100 million investing in their controller themselves. We don't have a pure breakdown of where all the money went, but R&D is only one piece of the puzzle. You tack on a couple of years to the development of Stadia and the technology that is required for it to operate. And it's not going to get over to $1 billion, but there's other costs that people aren't considering, and it's the infrastructure of the data centers. Now, Google has a very interesting thing when it comes to its data centers. It has data centers, it has edge, point-to-point, and then it has edge nodes. So if you actually go look, we can include a link in the description if you want to go look at their infrastructure size. We're not talking about North America here. We're talking about a worldwide company. They are a global company that has a lot of, just infrastructure that's invested into it. And to be able to take the servers, let alone to run Stadia and more, that's going to cost an exceptional amount of money, as opposed to kind of printing a physical box and sending it to your house. So beyond the infrastructure cost, beyond the data center cost of being able to go put in these servers into the various data centers, because the goal here is that you have to, it's not just a speed issue, it's a physical location issue. The quicker route that you can get to the data center, the better experience you're going to have. And we've experienced that here with Shadow PC. Being in Texas, we have a data center here in Texas, so we have a premier experience. If I had to go to Japan or to another place that's farther away, even to California from here, my experience would be degraded because there is still a distance. There is physics at play when it comes down to this. So they're investing a ton of money into all the infrastructure. On the other side of the coin, we got two more big cost factors here for Stadia. They have been purchasing and been developing their own studios, not just a studio, but their own network of studios to take advantage of the uniqueness of Stadia itself. Why is this interesting and and cost-wise? Well, that's expensive. You have salaries, you've got employees, and more. So when you break down all just those three of the costs, it's easy for them to get, especially when you look at the last 5 years, over $1 billion invested and more. And this, comes again from our contact over at Google, who I was thinking like, are we talking like $750, $800 million? And he's like, I was like, $1 billion? He's like, More money. It's not a bad thing. This is a really interesting technology that they brought in. Where they've obviously jumped the shark here is in PR. We've been asking and trying to have conversations around Stadia all behind the scenes. And this is where it gets interesting, and where I think the biggest fault when it comes to Stadia itself is tied into how they've decided to approach it. If you look at Gmail, if you look at some of their most successful products, it's always kind of seemed to launch into a beta. And that's what I think you have to set the expectation that this is. I know gamers, especially just in 2019, are tired of games and all kinds of services launching as a paid beta. And that's essentially what we've got going on here with Stadia. This is a paid beta. It's nothing they're going to walk away from anytime soon, but regardless, if you want to test it now, you have to pay. Otherwise, you can wait for the free version later on when that's more publicly aware. Where this goes wrong, where they're not investing a lot of money in right now, it feels like in PR. Namely because it feels like, especially talking with people over at Google, they've been really trying to get people into the dog food. And what the dog food is, if you're not aware, that's kind of their testing bed. There's different layers of it. And just for context, Apple doesn't call it dog food. Apple calls it something different because Steve Jobs didn't like the term. But overall, this is us kind of almost getting access to an extra layer of that, because they've obviously struggled with getting people internally to go and play this because of the biggest weakness that Stadia brings to it. And it's that it doesn't support cross-save and it doesn't support cross-play with their games yet. And that is ultimately kind of what's going to be the biggest telling factor. As a service, it can be just fine. It could be well received if it was an additive experience, something like the Xbox with xCloud and more. Even with PlayStation and PlayStation Now, you're going to see some evolutions of that coming down the pipe maybe in the next year or two as that technology improves. We know that cloud gaming works, and I know a lot of people are very skeptical and nervous about it because it's a big shift and change. And it's thankfully not going to happen overnight. It's going to be something that is going to take the next 10 or 15 years. There's obviously, we've talked about it multiple times on this channel, plenty of hurdles and plenty of more challenges that await with this technology. And that's kind of where a lot of the investment that you're not seeing pay out yet. And it's in their own studios. Because right now their studios themselves are trying to build games that are unique to the platform. Always on, always connected games like MMORPGs are rife to really take advantage of the technology, because gamers are already conditioned that you need to have an online connection to play those games. But what else can they take advantage of? And that's what their development studios are trying to do right now. They're trying to figure out how they can take advantage of the technology that they've created and that they've invested in, and that's obviously not here. There's no game that Google's own Stadia team, their own development studios, is launching alongside of it that could only be done on Stadia, and that again ties into the weakness of the PR and the weakness of the product as it launches. Plenty of people are going to be calling it dead. Plenty of people are going to be making assumptions that they're just not well educated in, or they're just doing it for the views, the sweet, sweet YouTube views. And that's kind of the game theorist to me. It's like, did Google do this on purpose so they could get those sweet, sweet YouTube views? We'll never know, because I doubt they'll ever go on the record for that. But if they ever do go on the record, be sure to quote our sources in that case. Honestly, at the end of the day, for me, it was obvious that they've spent easily over $1 billion, especially talking with Google, and especially with when you break down the different costs. When you just go look at what Microsoft spent on a controller for the development, that was back in 2013. It's only, you can only look to see that an R&D is going to be way more costly. Maybe 500 million, maybe 600 million. So how do you get to the billion? Well, obviously then you have data centers, because it's a little bit different when it comes down to the fact that you're not actually having a console in your house that's rendering and doing the work. You're having servers that you're connected to, which is great. And so they have these servers, you get connected, they have all these different things that they call pods that all get connected and that network these games together for a unique and I guess really interesting experience when you break it down. Obviously, it's going to be about the games, and it's going to take a really good game to get people excited about the service. And what's really going to be telling is when they figure out what this looks like. It's the Wild West when it comes to cloud gaming. And that could be what is ultimately frustrating for gamers like myself and gamers like the rest of the world who feel like there is an established way that this is handled. Google is launching Stadia against Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and then you look at the next generation coming down the line with the services and more. Can Stadia When? I have absolutely no idea. But I don't think Google's going to be walking away from the billions that they spent just because they had a bad launch. I think it's going to make, if anything, it's going to make them double down, take stock of what they need to do, and hopefully make a really good and interesting product overall. The question is that are we the product, and thus you have the free service for data mining, or are they the product and we're purchasing it? There's going to be a lot of unknowns, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting thing that plays out from 2020 and beyond. So anyway, we'll keep following it. We'll let you know if there's any other developments when it comes to Stadia. Let me know what your thoughts are when it comes down to the costs for Stadia, whether you feel they've spent enough money, if they're going to walk away, or more. Love to know anything at all. Sound off in the comments below. Anyway, for Work to Game, my name is Brian. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.